Hello and welcome back to the Whoniversals. And you read that title correctly. Last month I did say this was going to be a controversial video. So today I'll be giving my opinion on something that is a massive controversial topic within the community. And that is Doctor Who being made by Americans. I'll be covering how it was tried before in the past, how the show has had an influence on the modern day era of the show, and on how me and a couple of my friends would see an American version of the show happening. Now, where to begin? Well, the 1980s. There were rumors of an American film production company who were wanting to do a Doctor Who film, with the Doctor being played by none other than Michael Jackson. And for my thoughts on this, no. Now that's the only really minor thing we need to cover here. Now we're on to like the 90s. After Who was cancelled in the 1990s, several production companies came forward with either their own version of the program or a big-budget co-production. And the first company that got their hands on the rights to make their own version was the Dalton Race Film Group, who only got the license so they could do absolutely nothing with it. And they'd used nefarious and under-the-table ways to try and keep it, such as trying to get Star Trek actor Leonard Nimoy to film early bits of the show they were never really intending to use. And the Dalton Race Film Group's plans were halted by a producer who was trying to get the rights on the series, Philip Siegel, who had basically destroyed all of their plans into getting it done. Now, of course, Siegel himself was a major Doctor Who fan, and he clearly had shown that he was a fan of the show, as most people would describe him as a Doctor Who buff. And he had close ties to Steven Spielberg, and there were thoughts of a Doctor Who major motion picture at the time that was going to be produced by Siegel and directed by Steven Spielberg. And they had started making on like some small minor plans to start off with it, and those things were a new CGI design of the Daleks. And due to that, Spider Daleks had emerged, and if you watch my video from last month, you know that I hate this idea. While they're working on the designs of the show or movie or whatever it was going to end up being, Siegel had hired writer John Leakley to develop a pitch and series bible for the show. And if you know anything about this, and me as well, you know that there's one small part of this that I like, and I hate the rest. Leakley had proposed to have the series focus on the politics and Time Lord culture and its impact on the universe, and that its new Lord President, the Master, was going to be a ruthless dictator, and the Doctor and the Master were going to be brothers, and the Doctor and his grandfather Barusa were going to go on an expedition to find Ulysses, who is Barusa's son, and the Doctor and the Master's father. Along with these adventures, they encounter said Spider Daleks, who would be employed by the Master, Yetis, who would turn out to be Neanderthals, a remake of Shada, which would introduce Chronotis, and his niece, Romana, the Celestial Toymaker, who would be under control of the Master, and the worst thing of all, Cybes, who would be robotic pirates. Thank God this idea was dropped again and no one decided to bring it up. Thankfully, Spielberg looked at the draft of the pilot movie script and withdrew his name as a director, mainly due to it being too much like Indiana Jones. But also, it was rumored that it was also due to he didn't like what was in it. Now, after this, Siegel and the rights bounced around from place to place, and it seemed like the project was only stopped indefinitely, but thanks to Trevor Walton, an executive at Fox, who loved the series and liked what Siegel was doing, and the two of them agreed to at least make at least one TV movie out of this. And they were going to hire a new writer, and they were going to make at least a TV movie, and maybe a possible series down the line with a new writer, whoever they hired on next. Now, after Amblin and Spielberg had pulled out, Siegel had hired a new writer, Robert De Laurentiis, to write a new script for the version. This was also trying to Spielberg back onto the project, but that ultimately failed due to it keeping the same idea of the Doctor trying to find his father and battling against the Master. While Barusa's involvement was toned down, and they had inserted two new companions, a Joe Grant-like assistant named Lizzie, and her pet bulldog Winston, who were to both be from World War II. And thankfully, Siegel dropped the script and De Laurentiis from the project. At the time, Walton had stepped in and suggested Matthew Jacobs as a possible writer, and Jacobs ended up giving a successful pitch of the series that told a heavy good versus evil story. And that is the script that ended up being used for the TV movie. It went into production, film was shot, everything was raring to go. One problem, though. In the time slot, it was put up against the hit ABC sitcom Roseanne. And it wasn't just any Roseanne episode, it was supposed to be a real game changer of an episode. So that is what the TV movie had to go up against. And, well, spoiler alert, the TV movie lost. badly, and a series was never commissioned, and it seemed like that Doctor Who had died from then on out, well, in terms of television. America's effect on Doctor Who did not diminish after the TV movie. There are several points to America still having an influence on the show. Russell T Davies has said that two of his inspirations for his era of Doctor Who were two American shows, those being Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the 2003 reboot of Battlestar Galactica. And during the David Tennant era of the show being a massive success in the US, it led to the show being more known worldwide and also made the Series 6 premiere. The Impulse Astronaut on the Day of the Moon was filmed in America and used some known American actors for the roles. And for Series 8 premiere, when they were doing the big, massive world tour, there was a heavy emphasis on America during the said tour. So America has had an influence on the show since the 90s. Now, when I asked myself this question, I did not have the full answer, and I had asked several of my friends if one could be made. So, I made a questionnaire and for them to answer several questions on how an American series could be made. I asked them 7 questions. 1, would you like to see an American version of the show? 2, who would you like to see as showrunner? Who would you like to see as other influential writers on the show? 4, who would you like to play the Doctor? 5, which production company would you like to see produce it? 6, should it feature any of the show's iconic monsters? And 7, would you watch it? Now, I sent this questionnaire to several of my friends. Now, I'll start with the person who's going to end up editing this video and fellow member of the channel, Thomas. Now, he did say he would like to see an American version of the show. And for showrunner, he said he would like to see Tortured Miracle Day writer Jane Espenson as a showrunner. And in terms of other influential writers, he said he'd like to see Ben Edlund, Tim Minear, Dave Fury, and Stephen S. Knight as the other writers. He said he'd like to see actor Alex Denisof as the Doctor. He said he'd like to see the show produced by the CW. He said he would like to see Iconic Monsters be a part of it as long as he keeps the original design, and that he would indeed watch an American version of the show. Another person that responded to my questionnaire was another member of the channel and good friend of mine, Matt. He said he'd be neutral on the idea about the American version of the show, but he did say if one was made, he'd like to see Alex Kurtzman as the showrunner, and only mentioning Michael Halligan as another creative influence on the show. He said he'd like to see Star Trek actor Anson Mount as the Doctor. He said he would like to see the show be a co-production between CBS and Netflix. He said the show should keep the original villains and his original style, and that he would indeed watch it. Now, of the third of my friends that responded to this questionnaire was former member of the channel, Ben. So, he said he would not like to see an American version of the show, but he did respond to the questionnaires if there had to be one. Now, for showrunner, it's Ben, so who do you think it's going to be? He said he would like to see Jane Espenson as another creative writer on the show. He said he would like to see Whoopi Goldberg as the Doctor. He said he would like to see the series be produced by Netflix. He said that it should feature iconic monsters from the show, and that he would indeed watch it. Now, I know what you're all thinking at this point. What if I looked at these 7 questions and answered them myself? Now, in terms of the first question, would I like to see an American version of the show? Yes, definitely. But it must be under the correct writer. Now, as showrunner, I could not decide between 2 people. One would be showrunner and executive producer of Battlestar Galactica and of the hit Starz historical drama Outlander, Ronald D. Moore. But my second choice of the writer is someone who I'm sure no one probably would have heard of before, but they are a showrunner of 2 of my favorite shows and is also a fan of Doctor Who, that being Shonda Rhimes, who is the creator and showrunner and executive producer of both Scandal and Grey's Anatomy. Now, other writers I'd like to see be influential figures on the show. If it was more, I would like to see Battlestar Galactica and CSI writers David Weddle and Bradley Thompson on it. And if Ryan was in charge, I'd like to see Grey's Anatomy writer Krista Vernoff as part of the writing of the show. Now, who would I like to see play the Doctor? I myself would like to see either one of 2 companies tackle it, either CBS or Netflix. Maybe even a co-production, but one of those 2. I do think it should feature the iconic monsters of the show. And when I watch it, I'm American, so yes. Now, thank you for indulging me as I go through the history of America's relation to Who, and what me and a couple of my friends would like to see with an American version of the show. Now, next month, on January here on the Whoniversals, I will be doing absolutely nothing. But next month I will be having Series 4 of What If I Were Showrunner uploaded to that channel. And Series 3 will go out later on this month. But I think I should probably brace and warn you guys about my February video. on the 19th of February, 2021. On that date, I will be celebrating EastEnders' 36th anniversary by reviewing Dimensions in Time. So, until February next year, bye! Oh, let's put this insert in like you did like my series 2 ending episodes, or just put this at the end of the video without any context.